Today, I'm gonna show you how to do focus stacking both in camera and in Photoshop. Hey guys, and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace, and you can find me on Phlearn.com, where we make learning Photoshop and photography fun. And this is a really cool episode. We're doing focus stacking today. And for those of you guys who are unsure what focus stacking is, basically it's a technique where you're able to combine many different photos that we're taking at different focal points. It's very helpful for things like macro photography, where you have a very shallow depth of field. By combining multiple photos together, you can effectively extend your depth of field and get more things in focus within a small frame. So with macro photography, or anytime you need that slice thin, shallow depth of field, but you want to control what's actually in focus, focus stacking is going to be the method for you. So focus stacking is done in Photoshop, but in order to get the right images, you have to know how to shoot the photos in order for them to work to be stacked together. So we're going to show you guys how to actually shoot this. So focus stacking works really well for things like macro. So in this example, we've actually got figurines from Game of Thrones. This is Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, and we just decided, you know what, let's create a little scene around these guys. So we brought in some like fake moss, I cut some clippings from a tree, and we lit it like we would light a normal portrait. So we created this like little scene on the table and decided to photograph it with the macro lens. A ton of fun and a great opportunity to kind of expand what you do with your photography. The first thing you're going to need is a tripod. You want to make sure that your camera is in the exact same place for every single one of these shots. That's why Photoshop can combine them together and give you this focus stacking effect. Now, sometimes, even though a camera's on a tripod, you put your hand on the trigger and you pull the trigger there, and it actually is going to move the camera just a little bit. So to remove that movement, what we've done is we've actually hooked up a pocket wizard on top of the camera, connected it with the shutter release cable on the side of the camera, and then used another pocket wizard to trigger the shutter of the camera. That way we don't even have to touch the camera in order to pull the trigger, click the shutter, and take a picture. Next, you're gonna wanna be sure your lens is set to MF, or manual focus. This is gonna allow us to move the focal ring of the lens while taking pictures, and it's not gonna bring in autofocus, which would override what we're doing with the focal ring. So remember, manual focus when you're focus stacking. And last, we need to capture the images that actually make up the focus stack. So my suggestion is go ahead and choose your earliest stacking point, take a picture, rotate the focus ring just a little bit, take a picture, and keep on doing that so you have focus points that go further and further back from the camera. That way we can bring all these together in Photoshop and focus stack them perfectly. So we've just captured our images of Jon Snow and Daenerys, and now we're ready to bring them into the computer and create this focus stack. So we're gonna start off here in Lightroom. I went ahead and imported our files into Lightroom, and I just wanna show you guys basically the progression of a focus stack. So we're just gonna go through all these red images here. Let's just double click here, and I'm just gonna go from left to the right, and you should see the actual focus changing from image to image. In our earlier image, you can see Jon Snow is in focus very well in the foreground, but Daenerys is out of focus because when you're using macro lenses, you have a very, very tight focal range. So, as I move the focal ring backwards, you can see Daenerys is now in focus and Jon is out of focus. So, as far as optically, we are unable to get them both in focus at the same time, and that's why we're going to focus stack. So we want to make sure that they're both going to be in focus at the exact same time. So from here, what we're going to do is go ahead and export all of these images out. So I'm going to shift click on all the images that I took as I was rotating the focal ring and taking pictures. Now we're going to right click. We're going to go ahead and export those out, and just standard JPEGs are totally cool here. We're going to use a JPEG, and I'm going to even resize it to about 1500 pixels wide because they don't need to be huge. All right, you don't have to resize yours. You can do it at any size you'd like. Okay, let's go ahead and export. We're gonna stick this here in our images folder, and I've already done the export, so they're right there, and we're gonna hit open. Next, we're gonna jump into Photoshop and bring these images together using focus stacking. So here we are in Photoshop. We're ready to go ahead and load all of our images together. Now the best way to do that is to go to File, down here to Scripts, and then over here to Load Files into Stack. I don't need to open all my images separately when I can load them all into one big stack. So I want to choose Use Files. I'm going to go ahead and hit Browse here, and then I'm going to go to my focus stacking. We're going to go to our images, and I'm going to shift click on all the images that we're going to bring in together. Let's go ahead and hit Open. There we go. And I've got my images all listed out here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Attempt to automatically align source images. I do recommend having that checked. All right, let's hit OK, and Photoshop's going to go to work bringing all these different images together into one big stack. So now that Photoshop has loaded everything together, let's go ahead and take a look at our layers. Basically, we just have each one of the JPEGs is a layer in this image. So we can see, if I just turn some of these layers off, we can see the stacking actually does happen with these different images. So now what we want to do is figure out a way to get all of these images basically blended together, so we're going to see both Jon Snow and Daenerys in focus at the same time. And that's where focus stacking comes in. So this is what we've all been waiting for. Let's go ahead and do it. The first thing we're going to do is select all the layers here in Photoshop. So I'm going to go to my very top layer, scroll on down, hold the Shift key, and click on our bottom layer. And now you can see all of my layers are indeed highlighted. Indeed, I don't say that word enough. Next, we're going to go to Edit, and then down to Auto Blend Layers. This is where focus stacking is located, under Auto Blend Layers. Okay, so we're going to click there, and we have a couple options. Panorama would be great if you're creating a panorama, but in this case, we're going to use Stack Images, which is for focus stacking, and we even get a little preview here. I also recommend Seamless Tones and Colors. I do recommend that be checked. So now all I have to do is hit OK, and it's going to go ahead and return me layer masks that make different parts of different layers visible to make the focus perfect all the way from Jon Snow to Daenerys Targaryen, or in your case, whatever it is. You're expanding the focal range of your image. So let's go ahead and hit OK and see it pop out our layer masks. All right. Basically what Photoshop is doing is it's figuring out just the areas that are in focus on the different layers, and it's using layer masks to make just those in focus areas visible. So looking at our layer masks, this is what this layer mask looks like. That's what that one looks like there. This is what this one looks like. So you can see this is not something that you could do on your own. This is a very automated process that Photoshop is figuring exactly the areas that need to be on each of the different layers. So all these layer masks are combining together, and you can see if I just bring these more, it's just building our image piece by piece by piece based on what's in focus. And in the end, we have our complete image, Game of Thrones, really cool, focus stacked. All right, guys, and that's how we create a focus stacked image in Photoshop. And I actually really like this image, and it was super fun to create because we had the figures in the studio already. We had some moss, and I went outside and cut some little like bits off trees and stuck them in clay behind these guys, and it came out awesome. So just remember these key points when it's time to do your own focus stacked image. First is that focus stacking works really well for macro photography. Remember, the goal here is to extend the focal range of a camera lens. Normally, you can't get that much in focus, especially when you're shooting right up close. So focus stacking is going to allow you to get more in focus. Next, be sure to shoot on a tripod. This is going to make sure that all your images are in the exact same place, making focus stacking possible. Be sure your lens is on manual focus. That way you can move your focal ring and take images through the entire focal process. And if you want to get fancy with it, you can use a shutter release so that you don't have to touch your camera to fire the trigger. You still have to touch your camera to do the focus though, so may not make that huge of a difference anyway, but I wanted to do it. Next, we brought all our images into Lightroom. This allowed me to choose the images that I wanted to use for the focus stack and export them out as JPEGs. Then in Photoshop, go to File, Scripts, and Load Files into Stack. This is gonna allow you to bring a lot of different images together into one stack. And for the focus stacking, go to Edit and then Auto Blend Layers. Be sure you have stacking checked, hit OK, and Photoshop is gonna do the rest for you. Thanks so much for watching Phlearn, guys, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I had a blast creating it. It was so much fun to be able to work with miniatures, and basically we did this like we would do a normal photo shoot with big people. We just used smaller props and lighting and things like that. So it was a ton of fun, and if you guys have never done this type of photography, I would highly recommend it. And if you love learning Photoshop and photography from Phlearn, click that subscribe button on your screen now. We'll send you free Photoshop and photography episodes every single week, just like this one. We're really happy to have you as a part of the team. And if you have any ideas for a new episode or a question or a comment about today's episode, please leave it in a comment right down below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching Phlearn, guys. I really appreciate hanging out with you. Phlearn you later. Bye, everyone. Woo! Phlearn, Phlearn, Phlearn. Today, I'm gonna show you how to do focus stacking both in camera and in Photoshop. Boom, baby. Blow it up. Big ball of style. What? To the extreme focus stacking. Nailed it. Bam, that was a good intro. Rolling it. Further, we're actually gonna take the shutter. That way we don't even have to touch the camera in order to fire the shutter. All right, pull the shutter. All right, that way we don't even have to touch the camera in order to fire the shutter, in order to click the shutter and take a picture. That way we don't even have to touch a camera. That way we don't even have to touch the camera in order to pull the trigger, click the shutter. All right, in focus. Is it Daenerys Targaryen? All right, and that's all the, cool. So when this is done processing, it's gonna, your focus. So when this is done cool. So when this is, and in this case, you can see John Focus is perfectly in John Focus. Phlearn, get in here, Broderick. Bloopers. Hold on, Kieran. Get in here. He's rolling. Gotta get your head like in this area. You gotta go Phlearn, Phlearn, Phlearn.
Phlearn.
I don't think you're in.
Phlearn.
Get in here. Phlearn, 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 Phlearn. Was he in the frame?